Hatapu, assalamu alaikum, namaste, Haru Nefer. This is Kasak Ma Keparu with another video for you. And in this video, I want to talk about how you can defeat racism. But before I do that, I want you to hit the like button on this video. If this is your first time to my channel, welcome. Hit the subscribe button to get notifications on when I go live or when I upload recorded videos. Also, if you would like to expand your knowledge on the esoteric, on the spiritual, become a Patreon supporter. You can do so as little for $1 or $5 per month. And you get access to exclusive instructional videos on hypnosis, how to meditate, how to put together an amulet, how to invoke a spirit, some really great stuff, how to work with the oracles, the i-ching. So we have classes like that, which will take you to the next level in your spiritual evolution. So become a Patreon supporter. And lastly, be sure to share this video with family and friends, because we want to get this revolution started. We've got some good information here, and we just don't want to keep it to ourselves. We want to spread the word. And as in the story of Asar and Aset, it was Aset who went across the globe, not only collecting the pieces of Asar to put them back together again, but she proselytized about Asar's kingship. And so that's important. We have to talk about the world that we want to put in place and what's happening and what's going to happen. And I need you to do that. And also keep in mind that these teachings are left by our ancestors, and it's up to you to pick up on them and continue what our ancestors left off with. Otherwise, it's for nothing then, you know, because we're going to be headed toward dark times. And the only thing that really can save us is the realization of who we truly are, which is divine beings. That is the only thing that's going to save us. It's not going to be an outside savior, you know. I was reading the Pursuit of Happiness, and the character talked about how his mother told him that the cavalry is not going to come. You're going to have to do this on your own. And I want you guys to really live by that philosophy. There's no cavalry coming. There's no savior going to be resurrected to save you. You're going to have to save yourself, because you are God man, God woman. I want you to think about that. Keep that in mind. You understand? Because there's nothing more that the ruling elite wants you to do is to sit back, relax, and wait for the second coming, or wait for a savior, or wait for the cavalry. You know, so I when I was a kid, I loved westerns. That was a big thing with me, was westerns, and I always see the bugle boy or see them come up on a horse, and then they would play that bugle, and then the cavalry would come over the mountain and save the day. So don't look for that. Okay, realize that God has placed its consciousness within you, and all God's powers are within you, not in quantity but in quality, meaning that you don't have you have not amassed, or you don't have the expansiveness or the power in expanse is God, but you have it in quality. So there are things that you can do. And this is your divine right as a magician. Let's understand that clearly. Let me go back to that, because I just want you to really put into focus what I'm saying here, that you are God. God is within you. There is no outside God. And because God is within you, you share in God's power. Okay? Think about that. You have God's power. And the trick that the ruling elite are pulling on us is to make us believe that there is an outside world, there is an outside God, and that we have no power and say in how our lives unfold. And that is an outright lie. And that is how they get us, and that this is how they deceive us. But what I want to talk about tonight, real briefly, hopefully, is the idea of how we can defeat racism. And I think that's really important, because this is something that we've been grappling with for a long time now. And, you know, I started out in many different organizations, and I was really politically active in my earlier days. And I wanted to understand, you know, this whole thing of racism. To be honest, I first studied the Jewish Holocaust. That was one of the first things I got into studying, and really in depth. I even wrote a screenplay to deal with, a screenplay which was a narrative to produce, and I got investors for it. And I never went through with it, but I wanted to showcase what happened in the Holocaust, who were the Nazis, which were black magicians, you know, But like I said, never went through with it. But later, I did write a screenplay dealing with the African Holocaust and what happened in the Middle Passage and things of that nature. Um, what you will find and understand is that reality is nothing like what they paint it to be. There are secrets under the surface that you're not privy to. And because of that, you may try to address the issues in a very topical or superficial manner, and it does no good. And what I mean by addressing the problem in a superficial manner is going through political means, economic means, to deal with the situation. Now, I'm not saying that you should not strive for economic independence or to have your group to be economically stable or self-sufficient, but you must understand we are dealing with individuals who are black magicians. They rule the planet for a reason, and that is not just because they have amassed a lot of wealth. That is not just because they have all the military might and advanced technology in their black ops projects to where they have lasers and transporters and things like that. They got to the position of power because they stole the occult secrets of ancient Kemet, ancient Egypt. And with those occult secrets, they were able to imprison the planet. It took some time, but they were able to do it. And then hoard the knowledge, the occult knowledge, to themselves while retarding the progress of the planet. This is why we're on a timeline that is not correct. If you look at where we started out in ancient Kemet and look at where we are today, we should be now colonizing the stars with that knowledge that we had, but we aren't. We're still having trouble getting landings on the moon or getting satellites orbiting Mars. We're still having trouble doing that. Well, not really. We are doing it, but we're not telling the masses of the people because there is a secret space program going on. But I digress. I don't want to talk about that. But I want you to understand that in order to combat racism, you're going to have to look at it in a very different way. And I may say some things that may disturb you and unnerve you, but you must decide, are you going to take the blue pill or the red pill? Do you want to stay in fantasy land or do you want to really deal with the problem? And this is one of the eye-opening awakenings that I got to when I started to get politically active, is I realized that it was all a con game. It was all a con game. And in fact, what I realized very quickly was that this thing that we call racism could have been dealt with a long time ago, and we could have won this battle and defeated racism a long time ago. But there were certain things in place that kept us from doing it. And I'll explain a little bit about those. But, there was a while ago, I produced a film. I'm trying to find it. It's called War is a Bitch. And let me play a little bit for you guys so you guys can see this film. It's kind of an interesting film. Now to look back on it, but I produced it, I think, back in 2010 it was. So let me just share my screen so you guys take a look back. The film took place in the future, and it dealt with clones fighting humans, and the clones were outnumbering the humans, and because the clones actually wanted to have full rights, just as much rights as the humans. So they rebelled, and they were outnumbering the humans. So a war broke out, and they had to draft women into the front lines in order to defeat the clones because we were so short on numbers. So let me just take a look here so you can see it.
Captain, what happened to you? What happened to you?
Okay, so I'm not going to play the whole scene. You can check it out. It's on YouTube. Now, the thing that you need to realize about this is that what eventually they realized, and I'm going to give a spoiler away, toward the end of the film, is that the humans and the clones fighting each other. It was a political propaganda. And in fact, I think I was in New York at the time, and I gave the script to a friend, an old friend. No, I didn't give him the script. I gave it to somebody who then gave it to somebody who then gave it to this old friend of mine. And he was a very political activist. He was very political. And I have to admit, this guy was ahead of his time. Brilliant guy, very brilliant guy. I mean, his stuff was so deep. You'd read like one little paragraph and you have to think about it for like a days. And I kid you not. And I was in my office in New York. I had an office in New York, and I think it was on 38th Street. And I got a call from him. And I missed the call, but it was a voicemail he left. And the one thing, he went off on the voicemail talking about how he got my script, he read it, and he wanted to applaud me for the ending and for realizing the truth of the matter. Now, the ending was this. The clones in this movie are fighting the humans. And at the end of the movie, what the main protagonist, the main character realizes is that humans are dead. They're extinct. There are no humans. So it's all clones fighting clones. So it's government propaganda. See, they created this fictional war to make clones think that there is humans and to get them just to fight one another. You get what I'm saying now? We're living in a manufactured environment, a matrix, where you have a system in place that is manufacturing hate, that is manufacturing strife. It's getting us to fight each other for no reason other than to fulfill its own sick, devious purposes. You understand? And the reality of it is, when you look at it, we're all consciousness, all right? Now you'll say, well, it's not just a fight over race, it's a fight over resources. Well, when you understand the truth of the matter is that God created the universe and all that there is to be abundant. We live in a reality that's abundance. You cannot add or subtract from it. So therefore, you don't need to fight over resources. So what you have is the ruling elite taking resources from one group, giving it to another group, and then saying that, oh, well, this group is hoarding your resources, you should go fight them. So that's what you have. They're pitting us against one another. And this is a big lab experiment. They're creating fictional titles, alphabet people, the black, white, which are really those erroneous labels, and then based on those titles, rich, poor, they then want us to fight each other, and they categorize us on a hierarchy scale, the totem pole. And then they appoint these overseers within a specific group to be the ones who are the agents. And if you, let me give you an example of okay, let's look at one agent, for example. Here's one agent. Here's one agent here. Let me see if I can share my screen with you on this one here. There you go. There you go. The billionaire Jay-Z. He exists for the sole purpose of making you think that you could be a billionaire in a rap game. The rap industry, which was something at one point that was really good, that was started in the South Bronx, has now mushroomed into something very devious and is used to manipulate the masses of African Americans. But he is there as a distraction to make you believe that you can attain the type of wealth he has attained. You do not become a billionaire in this world unless you are doing the bidding of the ruling elite. The minute that you amass so much money to be a billionaire, you're going to get a knock at the door. It's going to go, and you're going to say, hi. They say, hi, Mr. New Billionaire. It's the ruling elite. You may have heard of us. Sometimes we go by the name of the Illuminati. We'd like to have a talk with you. You know that $1 billion you have in our banks, which is nothing but binary code, zeros and ones? Well, we can make that into zeros pretty quickly if you don't do what we say. So you're at their bidding. They're not going to allow you to amass such wealth and be able to be a free agent in this world without having a certain amount of control over you, okay? I want you to clearly understand that, all right? So you have all these guys out there when they announced that Jay-Z was a billionaire and they're running around thinking that they could do the same thing. He was appointed and anointed as the ambassador so that he could be used, for aspirational purposes to make you think, oh, if he did, I could do it too. And let me just go to another agent here. I don't want to use the term agent, but they're being used, and you have to understand what's going on here. Um, Let me see where we're at here. Nope, that's not what I wanted to show you. So let me stop that. Okay, go back to this one. Okay, yeah, let me just show you this one. Yeah, that's the one I want to show you. Okay, there we go. Hey, there we go. TI. All right, let me explain something about this. When I was growing up, I was born and for a certain part of my life raised in Virginia. One of the things that I always sought to was to get out of like poverty. We were, raised on a corn farm, and it was really good. I love corn, and we had the freshest corn there, and it was very interesting experience. My brother would get up; it'd be very hot, bugs everywhere, because I don't think we even had enough money for pesticide on the corn farm. And we would go out there and play in the farm and everything. But anyway, I digress. I want you to understand that what the modern media is doing. The modern media does not want intelligent individuals, especially individuals of color, to be at the forefront of anything. So what they do is they open the opportunity to the most ignorant, decadent minds that they can find and give them a certain amount of wealth and then put them into the limelight. And what this does is it makes you think that their way of talking, their lack of knowledge on worldly events, or just the capacity to think straight, is natural and something you should be emulating. And these individuals know nothing. They know nothing. And if you follow them, you're following them off a cliff. You understand what I'm saying? You're not going to be a billionaire like Jay-Z. Jay-Z is amassed the money he did because they gave him financial advisors. They gave him these things so that to help him amass the money so he could be used as a tool. Let me clearly understand. Make you understand this. I remember going to an audition. It was me and another guy. And the other guy, he looked like your typical homeboy from the street with the Adidas and the jacket. And I was this kid who was very well read, and I was studying hard. And we went for this audition for this magazine. They were going to pick one of us to put the magazine. Do you know they picked him? And at that point, when they picked him, I realized what was going on with the game. They had a certain mindset and image they wanted to put to the forefront of mainstream media to represent who we were. And this was the control factor. If you can get people to idolize the ignorant, the stupid, the dumb, then they, in fact, will become the ignorant, the stupid, and the dumb, and they will become sheep, and they will follow. This is what you have in mainstream media. Now, I'm a big fan of Will Smith. I love Will Smith. But I want you to understand, when you watch The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, what Will Smith's character is and what Carlton's character is. Carlton, who's intelligent, who's smart, who goes to an Ivy League school, is made to seem like a buffoon, laughable, while Will Smith from Philly doesn't have the schooling or background, but he's the one you want to be. He's cool. Do you understand what I'm saying? And just as a side note, they got the whole family from The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. In New York, they did an interview, and the mother, the father, all of the characters were there to talk about Will Smith. And I had an opportunity to be there and sit there and give my take on the show and everything like that. It was a great experience, and it was really great meeting them. I was like, wow, I met the mother, and she was the light-skinned mother, not the dark-skinned mother. This is when the show was going off the air. So if I can find that interview, that'd be great, because we're all talking about Will and what the show meant and stuff like that. And don't ask me this question, which was, I was never on the show, had nothing to do with the show, but they wanted me to come on there and interview about the show. At that time, I was like, was I a celebrity at that? And I was making rounds and doing interviews, but I had a movie come out. So that's why I was like making the rounds. And when you do that, you're in demand. So they knew, they said, oh, he has a film coming out called Bugs. Let's get him to talk about Will Smith and the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. But anyway, I digress on that one again. Okay. So, yeah, it was just funny that they had me on there. All right. So what I want you to understand is this. When I came to the epiphany and understood that this whole thing about racism could have been dealt with a long time ago, but there are certain mechanisms in place to ensure that we never overcome this because it works the way it is. And part of that, as I've already indicated to you, is putting the taskmasters in place, putting your Jay-Z's, your T.I.'s, and your little Kims and whatever in place to make you think aspirationally and to keep you away from any intelligent pursuits. And I'm going to get deep on you. The first thing I did that I knew about when I was growing up and studying and getting involved in the whole political movement, that the thing that I came to the realization of is that I was surrounded by a bunch of dummies. I quickly came to a realization that most of these people in these so-called progressive political movements who are looking to end racism, looking to make political change, were dumb as a doornail. I kid you not. And I said, I got to get out. And I've always sought to do that because I knew one thing. I knew that if you allowed yourself to be around those things, and we call this the mastermind group, that you're a culmination of the 5 people that you're around, is that your energy vibration will align with theirs and you'll start to think like them. And you don't want to do that. Now, in the occult, we call this being controlled by, and this is a pretty good book I just got called Ergomores, the occult entities that watch over human destiny. So I talk a lot about topas, ergomores, pendulums, how these are thought entities which control your thinking. And that once they have you, you'll start to think what we call is the group think. You'll be in the group mindset. And that is the exact thing that you don't want to do. So most of my life, I've always been like a maverick. I tried to go outside of that and say, I'm not going to do what everyone else is doing because I don't want to be caught up in that mindset. Even though I saw that they were given the accolades, given the awards to those individuals who played by their rules. So meaning I saw that if you were the homeboy, you could make great strides in the movies, in TV, in the music industry. But I didn't care. And I said, no, I'm going to create intelligent films. I'm going to write about intelligence, occult subject matters. And then what they do at that point is they put you on the peripheral. They marginalize you. So that they have to make sure that the images that you see are of the most dumbed down, ignorant, lowest common denominator of the bunch. This is how the control mechanism is in place. And when you see these conferences and these panel discussions, they stack the deck to make sure that the individuals that are there are either on their payroll or are not the brightest bulbs in the bunch. And if you were in that circle, you would quickly realize that the reason we're in the condition we're in is because we're being led by the deaf, dumb, and blind. And that they aren't our leaders, but they're appointed by the ruling elite. Therefore, they go on interviews. Therefore, they get lots of followings, And you have to ask yourself a lot of times on YouTube when you see people who have amassed a large following, how did you get that? And that's because even YouTube selects certain channels to promote that goes along with their agenda. That's what you're dealing with here. So from that point, I began to study the occult and understand that, hey, you know what? What really controls us are these ergomores, that when you become attached to them, you think in the group mindset. And this is going kind of similar to the 100 monkey principle. If you don't know what an ergomore is, it's a thought virus. It's a thought that is given life. And then it first has it's self-determined, well, I shouldn't say self-determined, but it has the prime directive of being of existing. So it protects its existence. And the next thing is it needs people to feed it, to give it energy, to give it life. So it looks for new recruits. And so as we talk about in terms of pendulums, what a pendulum will do is the pendulum will poke you. And what that means is that the pendulum will get your attention by creating a situation. And if you go along with that situation, then the pendulum has you. And some pendulums will adorn you with accolades, with fame, with money. Other pendulums will punish you if you try to go against them. We're talking about thought viruses or spiritual entities. This is how it works. So when you see these rappers who have money, fame, women, you have to understand that they are under the guise and control of an ergomore or a thought virus or a pendulum. And those pendulums have been specifically created by the black magicians, the ruling elite, to govern them, to keep things in order. You see, this system is run by remote control. It's run by the ruling elite creating these spiritual entities, which then influence the masses to think in a certain way. If you go against that, then the ergomores will punish you by creating what we call a so-called bad luck. Things will happen to you if you go against that. And then you'll find yourself going through real challenges after challenges after challenges. You understand what I'm saying? Now, when you look at things like bigotry, racism, you have to understand that those are on autopilot. Those are ergomores or spiritual entities that are doing the work. And they're creating the strife. And they're fueling it by getting in new recruits. So what I'm saying here is that when you are looking at this, in a way, this thing called racism, bigotry, sexism, you're dealing with what I've always called is the Hydra. Because the Hydra is a mythological Greek creature, right? Of Greek mythology. That if you cut one head off, it simply grows another head and it'll keep attacking you. So I want you just to take a look at this to get an idea of what I'm talking about. Because this is important and you need to understand this.
Biggest questions. I'm Ron Mackenzie Lafergie. The Hydra, otherwise known as the Lernaean Hydra, was a large snake-like monster popular in Greek mythology. In the mythology, it was eventually killed by the divine hero Heracles, and of course, in the 1997 Disney film, it was slain by the golden-voiced Hercules. But what if it was not a creature of myth or character in the best Disney film ever, but it actually existed? Let's explore. If you want more What If videos, check out our biggest What Ifs playlist on the channel. Now get ready, it's time to ask the question, what if the Hydra was real? The Hydra has been depicted in a number of different fictional worlds, each describing slight differences. Even within Greek mythology, there is some disagreement as to the qualities of the Hydra. Everyone knows about its ability to regrow heads after one has been removed. We've all seen Hercules wear hit to the Hydra. But various accounts tell of differing traits. Images of the Hydra have been found on bronze fibulae dating back to 700 BC, showing a six-headed beast. However, in the writings of Alcaeus in 600 BC, the creature had 9 heads, while later work by Simonides would claim it to have 50. Similarly, its ability to regenerate these heads differs from writer to writer. Some have it regaining 2, some 3, and some don't bother to specify. So in the face of this uncertainty, this video will take the most commonly known version of this, where it begins with just 1 head and grows 3 new ones for each head that is chopped off. Because Hercules rocks! So what would happen if this beast was actually real? Well, back in the day, it would be absolutely terrifying, but quite avoidable. The Hydra would be a significant danger and would take a number of lives, but people would simply be able to flee from it. Most depictions of the Hydra are not particularly fast-moving, and while it would be rough to pack up and leave your home, that's a lot better than getting eaten by the Hydra. This would cause ancient humans to become more nomadic in areas inhabited by the Hydra. You would want to be able to pick up and move on little notice to avoid the beast. It's likely that people would move far away to escape it, but in ancient times you couldn't just hop on a plane and jet off across the world. Travel took time. This would have pretty significant effects on history. However, as fearsome as this beast would be, eventually technology would catch up to it. But before we get into that, we should address the elephant in the room. If you're up against a giant creature that gains 3 heads every time you chop one off, stop chopping off heads. It's true that in the mythology, the creature was defeated by cauterizing the wounds of chopped off heads, but in reality, people would likely realize that the way to deal with the beast would be to attack the body and attempt to strike its heart, rather than playing into its hands by allowing it to gain more heads. As I was saying, upon the invention of firearms or explosives, we would likely be able to kill the beast with ease, attacking from afar and focusing on the body, not the heads. It's possible that this would actually occur even sooner, as there would be a good deal of pressure to invent something that could deal with the Hydra. By the industrial age, it's likely that humanity would be capable of killing the creature with weaponry. It's even possible that we wouldn't need this kind of technology. Humans have learned to deal with dangerous beasts in a number of ways over the years. One example that could be relevant to the Hydra is the way in which indigenous people of North America, specifically those living on the plains, would hunt buffalo. These are animals that were very dangerous to hunt the old-fashioned way, but by causing them to stampede off a cliff, the people were then able to collect the meat from their corpses. Sadly, this is believed to have resulted in a great deal of waste and depletion of resources. With the Hydra, that wouldn't be much of a concern. It's even possible that early people, like the ancient Greeks, would be able to kill the beast without the use of heroes like her.
Now, do you understand the buffalo, how the Native Americans would drive them off a cliff and they would all die and they would collect their carcasses and they would use that for meat, which is kind of like how they're doing us now. They're hoarding us. And they're, as I told you the example before, how they are getting us to follow these deceptive individuals, these appointed so-called celebrities or leaders, and we're following them off a cliff. Now, there's something very important for us to learn from the mythological story of the Hydra, and that is Hercules fought the Hydra. Who is Hercules? Hercules is Heru, or the hero, okay? So how did Heru defeat Set, which Set is the Hydra? He went to Tahuti to gain wisdom. In other words, the announcer there said it so poignantly, was stop cutting the heads off. You know what I mean? It just grows more heads. So when we're attacking racism, the one thing that we do is, oh, Donald Trump's a racist. Let's get rid of him and put a new president in place. Oh, the head of this company, the CEO, is a racist. Let's get rid of them. All you're doing is attacking the heads, and they're just going to put another person in place. You got to look at the body and get to the heart of the matter and understand what this thing, racism, is really about. Now, this is not something to be taken very lightly. We're talking about something that was created, because that's exactly what it was, created, that has caused countless lives through the history of this planet. And it's still going strong. So we have to look at it as such. And I want to show you another clip. This is from Goodbye Uncle Tom. And this really just demonstrates the severity of what racism has done and what it can continue to do.
A centimeter of this skin has twice the number of sweat glands as this skin. And you do not need a microscope to see the limited cranial capacity and the vile wool that covers this low body. Or the eyes completely lacking in any blue pigment, or the animal-like nose with its dirty wide nostrils and the abnormally strong teeth and this almost Neanderthal jaw are all characteristics of a subhuman race, a race far inferior to our own. A race that is but another example of nature's innumerable attempts to obtain perfection. Nature loves perfection. The perfection of the European Homo sapiens, the white race. Us.
Excuse us, Professor, but aren't you Jewish?
Yes, sir. Why?
So I really love this film. It's called Goodbye Uncle Tom, and if you haven't seen it, please check it out. It needs to be like rebooted for modern day. It's a really brilliant film in how it tackles things, you know. But the death and destruction that this thing, which you call racism, has left behind is immeasurable. And we have to stop playing games with this thing. We have to understand what it really is. And it is trapped in the collective consciousness of the planet. It is a living, breathing entity that has self-preservation on its mind. And it is looking to grow and become stronger. And it was created for that specific purpose of death and destruction. Again, it's an ergomorph. Speaking of him being Jewish, which I thought was interesting, why don't we take a look at another example of something that has ravaged the planet that has caused a lot of problems as well, because I think it's important that we get a well-rounded understanding and not be myopic in our perspective on what's going on, you know. So let's take a look at this.
In the boiling heat of summer and intense cold of winter, most were unable to withstand such harsh conditions and died within 3 months. Each barrack was packed with from 700 to 1,000 prisoners. At its peak, 5 people had to share the same bed. These holes were toilets. People who became infected with diseases such as typhoid were regarded as useless and killed without mercy.
Dlatego, że praca tutaj to była praca niewolnicza.
The Nazis worked us hard, beat us up, and shot the sick ones to death. For the first 2 years of operation, the Nazis tried to eliminate us Poles using labor as an excuse. Prisoner number 6804 was also sent to Block 11, known as the Death Block. Prisoners who showed even the slightest sign of resistance to the Nazis were sent here to be executed or tortured, which often resulted in death. This is the standing cell for torturing prisoners. 4 people were crammed into a 90-centimeter square cell and forced to remain standing for days. Under suspicion of communicating with an anti-Nazi activist, he was confined in the dark cell, a cell without light. He could hear sounds outside through the small air holes. They were connected to the wall just beside the death wall, where executions by firing squad took place. Almost 10,000 Polish people were killed at the death wall. Auschwitz concentration camp started its history by detaining and torturing Polish people. It later developed into a Jewish genocide facility.
So that's sad. I want you to also know that when you see these old films, 1 second here. These old films depicting the Nazis and them burning the cross in their uniforms, and what you're really witnessing is a ritual, because they were very heavily steeped in the occult, and they were trying to awaken certain spiritual entities to have them take over the planet. All right. When you understand what Hitler was trying to do in the burning of the cross, the massive rallies, then you can understand better in terms of the African American Holocaust, meaning that the same thing was applied there. They were using occult forces to eliminate people in Africa. So this thing has been going on a long time. And the Nazi Party, although Germany was defeated, and story goes Hitler committed suicide or whatever, the Nazi scientists are still, their work and their legacy is still with us today. And they were granted asylum by the Vatican under Operation Paperclip. I've talked about this before, and you can research it. And many of them went into work for NASA. All right. And if you go back and you look and you research certain things like Aleister Crowley, L. Ron Hubbard, you'll find that these men tie back to the Nazi Party, that these men have occult backgrounds. And these men were racist white supremacists. So anyway, so I want you to understand that we are dealing with something very sadistic and very evil here. And that it's going to take more than moving or repositioning heads to get rid of this thing. The more that we attack the heads, the more heads it's going to grow. We're going to have to look at what is the origin of this thing? Where is it coming from? What's happening here? And one of the things I've always talked about is looking at creating an herbivore of our own that can deal with this sick thing that's out there. And this will only come when the masses of us are like-minded and come together. And that in itself will create a spiritual entity that can live in love and light. But unfortunately, I don't think that we're able to do this because we're now led by the deaf, dumb, and blind. Those of us who don't know what's going on, who don't care to know, and are not really trying to help the group out, are the ones causing the trouble now, just as much as the ones who were the architects and creators of this thing called racism. And I want to show you something, and I'm debating whether I should show it to you because, you know, I don't like to point the finger at any one individual or people. You know, in fact, you know, I'm not going to show it because it was a video of a young man going to get a table. Well, let me show a little bit of it. Let me just show a little bit so you guys could understand. I'm not sure if you're familiar with this gentleman's name. His name is Jay Morrison. He deals with real estate. He's an entrepreneur. I guess him and his wife or his girlfriend tried to get a table at this restaurant and they denied him a table. So he's crying racism, you know. So let me just show this, just a quick thing about this. Let's see what this is about.
It's not something I would do. I mean, I'm not going to lose my job. Where does it say that? I want to see it written. Okay. A, so recording me, you need my consent to that? No, we don't. Yes, you do. I need to see it written. If you guys don't go.
You are refusing us seating in the establishment.
It's not something that we do company-wide. Okay, well, I'm going to be sat with people before. Any other people in the area, and they'll do the exact same
I'm taking my woman out to eat and my two
Show me
friends.
on paperwork, please.
So,
how many parties are in the state?
I'm not asking you to accommodate a party or the six. I'm asking my queen and my two friends. Do you accommodate parties of four?
We do. Okay.
So can us four please go eat?
I came in at 7 and I really don't have the time.
No, we cannot. I came in by myself and I'm taking my queen and my two friends to eat.
Okay, and I understand that. And if you all come back and it's just 4 of you, that's fine. But it's not like
I want to see it written on paper.
I'm going to ask you to step back.
I'm going to ask you to show it to me on paper.
What is your problem?
I'm so sorry.
4 people are asking to be seated.
I'm asking to be sat.
You're denying us seating.
We understand.
So seat me, please. I'm asking to be
We're not
sat.
denying your seating. We're just asking that if you could just bring it down.
I'm asking to be treated like any other party.
But we've been doing that. We're being disrespectful.
That's not happening. I'm being disrespectful.
You're talking. You're yelling and putting your hands.
I am. So show me on paperwork. Show me on paperwork. Where's that?
I
Rule?
don't have to do that.
No.
Well, I don't have to not be sat as a party of 4. So show me on paperwork. Where's that here? Show me on paperwork. Where's the rule? Sir, I want to be sat as a
Can
party
we
of
act
4.
like civilized people here?
Please.
Okay.
Can we act like civilized people here?
Can I be sat as a party of 4?
We're asking to be sat as a party of 4. They're saying we know you came in at 7. How are you going to tell us our relationship with those people?
I'm so sorry. We don't split up our parties.
We're not asking you to split us up. Stop doing the little redirect spin narrative you do. Listen to the English. Us 4 people are listening. No, you're being
You
disrespectful.
disrespected us, sweetheart. You disrespected us when we walked in here.
Sir, people,
I'm so sorry. No one
what I'm asking
you
is
at
that
this point.
4 people are asking to be seated. I'm not speaking on behalf of any other people, but 4 people.
So can
Are we all clear on that?
I mean,
I know that.
so we're just, you know, at this point, we're just, you know, the relationship has been too aggressive. So we're just gonna, you
No,
know,
it has been too aggressive. You denied us seating.
just because, you know, this has been aggressive. Like,
Why are you guys denying us
You
seating?
guys are in a lawsuit. So that's
Why? But on what grounds are you denying us seating? I don't understand it.
because we're being aggressive, so we're just.
But no, that's what initially the aggression is because of discrimination that's happening.
You guys can go to a different place.
I don't appreciate how we've been.
But why are you discriminating against us?
We're not.
Do you see what he's saying? He's saying that they're discriminating against him and his queen. I hate that term, you know. The issue comes about simply because he's a guy who does what he calls these street presentations. He'll take an easel and he'll go on the street, he'll go in the barbershop and he'll do a presentation on investing or real estate, and he has the whole presentation. So the whole thing came about because he went to the restaurant with 7 of them and a camera, and they only had a table for 4. So then he got a little bit upset, and then they said, well, if you want to reduce your party to 4, we can give you a seat. And then he says, yes, I will reduce my party to 4. And, you know, of course, that seems suspicious right there. And then as the conversation goes, him and his team become aggressive, and he does become aggressive. And the individuals that are there who are the hosts and the waiters, you can see, are African American. They're black. I don't see how these people are discriminated against them. You know, they have a policy that they have 4 seats, and that's what they can accommodate him with. But because he goes on this whole tirade, becomes aggressive, talks about racism, talks about discrimination, why would they even want to bother with someone like that? This is not fighting racism. He could have just quietly gone to another restaurant and sat down. In fact, the restaurant does have a right to refuse him seating. It's up to them. It's their business, their establishment. And they're not denying him based on race. It's clearly not on race. With all of the host is black, the waiters are black. So and the reason why I'm pointing this out, because he's a very prominent person, a prominent figure in the community. And what I'm saying is, we're not attacking the problem. We're not dealing with the issue. This thing of racism has caused death and destruction. It's not, and I believe later on, he actually goes and gets a group of people to protest this restaurant, which is absurd to me. What I try to teach you guys is this, right? You're God men, God women. And I gave you the example of last week, what happened to me when I wanted to go to this restaurant and get a seat. I knew I was coming in late. So I said to myself, I'm going to meditate, visualize myself getting a seat, and everything will work out okay. Well, lo and behold, I got to the restaurant late. There was a seat there. And not only that, it was sitting next to a young woman who I didn't know I was even working with. And I was working with her. Waiter came over, said, you can have anything on the menu you want. They gave me great service. You have power. You have power. This bullshit about becoming belligerent, crying racism, talking, oh, you discriminate. That's not becoming of a God man, God woman. Talking about, oh, I'm taking my queen out. No. Let me explain something to you, all right? You can manifest another restaurant. You can manifest a seat at another restaurant, or manifest a city if you want. We have to stop thinking limited thoughts. We have to understand how this matrix works. It responds to your thoughts. If you think that this world is going to be racist to the extreme, it will be racist, and you will be the victim. Now, get what I'm saying. I'm not talking about the fact that you can eliminate racism by yourself, because it's a collective agreement, okay? But what I'm saying is, you can have a say in how it affects you. All right. And there's no reason to be belligerent, yelling, talking about this and that, causing a scene. That's not helping to fight racism. And that is not recognizing the divine being that's within your spirit, because you're facing an evil that is killing, murdering people. And you're crying about a little seat at a table. That's all I have to say on that. I'm just saying, though, we have to get to a point where we start to come to an understanding of our power and start to utilize our power so that we can save the planet. And we're in a prime position right now to do so. The information is out there. There are people that are writing about these subject matters, talking about how we can create our own thought viruses or our own ergomores or our own pendulums that can benefit us as a collective and bring the planet to a frequency of love, peace, and prosperity. We can do that. But it will take us to stop following these nincompoops that call themselves our leaders, to stop idol worshiping, because it's not doing us any good. Because all it's doing is just lowering the frequency and vibration of the planet to a level of where we're just sheeple, we're stupid, we're just following. We're not exercising our intelligence. Do you understand what I'm saying? We're intellectually lazy because we don't think. Is this the best use of my time arguing with this woman over a table? Is this really helping the ancestors who died in the Holocaust? Whether it be the African Holocaust, the Jewish Holocaust, because souls are souls, consciousness is consciousness, we're all one. Is this the best use of my time? Is this really going to help change things? No, it's not. Is there a power I can tap into that can be a game changer? Yes, there is. So with that said, my brothers and sisters, I am going to have on Thursday, if you remember Patreon, we're going to be doing a hypnosis session. And this hypnosis session is going to be geared toward awakening the power within you to attract abundance, to attract wealth, to attract love, everything in your life. So if you're a member of Patreon on the Assyrian level, you'll have the opportunity to join us in this hypnosis session. If you're not a member, become a member right away before Thursday so you can participate in this hypnosis session. It's going to be awesome. If you've ever been in one session with me, you know that it's very inspiring. It's great. You'll love it. And one thing I really pride myself on is I have created a technique that works. That when I put you under a state of hypnosis or trance, it awakens your God power. It allows you to start manifesting things in your life. Other people, all they do, and this is the secret to why their stuff doesn't work, all they do is they talk about it. Well, you have to visualize. Well, you have to recite these mantras and say these things. No, I get to the heart of the matter. I don't chop the head off the Hydra. I say that in order for you to accept a new belief system, which is a prerequisite to manifesting a new reality, you have to first change the core belief system that you have by going into a deep, deep state of hypnosis or trance state. In that state, your spirit is susceptible. It means whatever it takes in, it will believe. Because I did the video on, well, this is not it though, but how, well, this is a knife, butter knife, but how you have to stop trying to bend the spoon. Only recognize that there is no spoon, and then you'll become master of the matrix. But too many of us already believe that the spoon is solid. It's real. It's not. And the only way I can convince you of that is to take you into a deep state of hypnosis, trance, reprogram you to accept the fact that this does not exist. And if you understand what quantum physics tells us, that nothing is solid, it doesn't exist, then you will know that you can create wonders in your life. You can create wonders in your life. You can create wonders in your life. All right? Think about that. Because like I said before, a lot of these books, they mean well. The Secret, Reality Transurfing, Law of Attraction, but they don't give you the quintessential ingredient to manifesting the new reality, which is you have to go into a deep state of trance to accept a new belief system. With that, I want to say, this is Kasak Ma Kaparu, son of Ma'at and Tahuti. My aunt is the beautiful goddess Hedaru. And until my next broadcast, Amin Ra.